The invitation arrived on expensive cream paper, embossed with gold lettering that screamed luxury. You're cordially invited to Shakira's charity gala for Latin American children. Caroline Leavitt stared at the invitation in her White House office, her silver cross necklace catching the afternoon light streaming through the window. It's a trap, her communications director Emma warned, pacing behind Caroline's desk. Why would Shakira invite you? She's been throwing shade at conservative politics for months. Caroline folded the invitation carefully, her expression unreadable. Maybe she wants to have a real conversation about helping children instead of just posting about it on Instagram. But deep down, Caroline knew Emma was right. This wasn't about charity. This was about optics, about getting the youngest White House press secretary in history on camera with one of Latin America's biggest stars, probably to make her look out of place or naive. The gala was set for Miami Beach at Shakira's private oceanfront mansion. A-list celebrities, politicians, and media moguls would be there. The kind of crowd that usually made conservative voices feel unwelcome. If you're going, Emma said, you need to be prepared for anything. Caroline opened her laptop and began typing. For the next 3 hours, she researched everything she could find about Shakira's recent business ventures, her charity work, and her connections throughout Latin America. What she found made her pause. There were gaps, large financial gaps in the charity's public records, donations that seemed to disappear into shell companies, and most interesting of all, a pattern of events and concerts in cities that just happened to be major drug trafficking routes. Emma, Caroline called out, her voice steady but focused, get me everything you can on the Pais Descalzos Foundation. I want financial records, board members, and every single project they've funded in the last 5 years. Emma raised an eyebrow. You think there's something there? Caroline's fingers drummed against her desk, a habit she'd developed when pieces of a puzzle were starting to come together. I think Shakira didn't invite me to talk about helping children. She invited me because someone told her to. The question was, who and why? As Caroline boarded the plane to Miami the next morning, she carried with her a leather folder containing documents that would either prove her suspicions wrong or change everything. She had no idea that in less than 24 hours, she would be standing on a stage, reading aloud information that would bring down one of the world's biggest pop stars. The plane descended toward Miami International Airport, and Caroline could see the glittering coastline below. Somewhere down there, Shakira was preparing for what she thought would be a simple photo opportunity with a young, inexperienced politician. She had no idea what was coming. The mansion was even more extravagant than Caroline had imagined. Palm trees swayed in the ocean breeze, and the sound of waves mixed with the gentle hum of conversation from the world's elite. Shakira's home was a fortress of glass and marble, with every detail designed to impress and intimidate. Caroline stepped out of her black SUV, wearing a navy blue dress and her signature silver cross. She looked professional, composed, but not trying to compete with the glamour around her. That was intentional. Caroline! Shakira's voice rang out across the marble foyer, her Colombian accent warm and welcoming. The pop star glided toward her in a flowing white gown, arms outstretched for an embrace. I'm so honored you could make it. The cameras flashed immediately. This was the shot they wanted, the conservative politician and the liberal pop star appearing to bridge divides for charity. Thank you for inviting me, Caroline replied, accepting the embrace but keeping her expression neutral. I'm always interested in learning about efforts to help children. Shakira's smile was perfect, practiced. Come, let me introduce you to some people. For the next hour, Caroline was paraded around the party like a trophy. Celebrities posed with her for photos, made small talk about finding common ground, and generally treated her like an interesting novelty. She smiled politely, answered questions about policy, and all the while observed. She noticed how certain guests seemed to defer to a man in an expensive suit who stayed in the shadows. She saw how Shakira's assistant kept checking her phone nervously, and she observed how the conversation always seemed to steer away from specific details about where the charity money actually went. Ladies and gentlemen, Shakira announced, tapping a champagne glass with a silver spoon. If I could have your attention, please. The crowd gathered around a small stage that had been set up near the pool. The Miami skyline glittered in the background, creating a perfect backdrop for what was supposed to be an inspiring speech about helping disadvantaged children. Tonight we celebrate not just charity, but unity, Shakira began, her voice carrying easily across the crowd. We have with us someone who represents a different political perspective, but who I believe shares our commitment to children. Caroline felt the spotlight literally and figuratively shift to her. This was the moment she'd been expecting. Caroline Levitt, would you join me on stage? The applause was polite but measured. Caroline walked up the steps, her leather folder tucked discreetly under her arm. She had a choice to make. Play along with the scripted unity moment or do what she came here to do. Shakira handed her the microphone with a confident smile. Please tell us about your work for children. Caroline took the microphone, looked out at the crowd of celebrities and power brokers, and made her decision. Thank you, Shakira. I do care deeply about children, which is why I spent the last 48 hours researching your foundation. The smile on Shakira's face flickered for just a moment. In the crowd, phones started coming out, sensing that something unexpected was about to happen. And what I found, Caroline continued, opening her folder, raises some very serious questions. The atmosphere at the party shifted instantly. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips. Even the ocean breeze seemed to quiet as Caroline opened her folder under the bright stage lights. Shakira's smile remained frozen in place, but her eyes had gone cold. Caroline, this is a charity event. Perhaps we could discuss the Pies Descalzos Foundation, Caroline interrupted, her voice clear and steady, claims to have built 200 schools across Latin America. But according to Colombian Education Ministry records, only 47 of those schools actually exist. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Phones were now openly recording. This wasn't going according to anyone's script. Where did the other $50 million go? Caroline asked, looking directly at Shakira. The pop star's composure cracked slightly. Those are complex international projects. There are always administrative costs. Administrative costs don't explain why your foundation's largest donor is a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands, Caroline continued, flipping to another page. A company that, according to DEA financial tracking reports, has been flagged for suspicious transactions with known cartel money laundering operations. The crowd gasped. Several celebrities started moving toward the exits, clearly not wanting to be associated with whatever was unfolding. Shakira grabbed for the microphone. This is ridiculous. You're making wild accusations. But Caroline stepped back, keeping the mic. I'm reading from official documents. Would you like me to continue? The man in the expensive suit who had been lurking in the shadows was now pushing through the crowd, speaking urgently into a phone. Security guards appeared at the edges of the party, but they seemed confused about whether to intervene. Your concerts in Medellin, Cali, and Barranquilla over the past 3 years, Caroline read from another document, coincided exactly with major cocaine shipment schedules according to intercepted cartel communications. The same cartels that donated to your foundation through those shell companies. Shakira's face had gone pale beneath her makeup. You don't understand how business works in Latin America. I understand how money laundering works, Caroline replied. And I understand that while you've been lecturing Americans about social justice, you've been taking blood money from the people destroying communities across Latin America. The crowd was in chaos now. Reporters were shouting questions, celebrities were fleeing, and somewhere in the distance, sirens could be heard approaching. Shakira made one last desperate attempt to regain control. Even if some of this were true, which it isn't, what gives you the right to come into my home and the same right that gives you the platform to influence millions of people? Caroline shot back. The difference is, I'm telling the truth. She held up a final document. This is a wire transfer record showing $15 million moving from your personal account to a known cartel front company just 6 months ago. The same month you posted on social media about fighting corruption in government. The sirens were getting closer. The man in the expensive suit was now running toward a speedboat docked behind the mansion. And Shakira, the woman who had built an empire on her image as a socially conscious artist, stood exposed under the Miami stars. But Caroline wasn't finished yet. The FBI agents arrived just as Caroline was reading the final document. Black SUVs surrounded the mansion while helicopters circled overhead, their searchlights cutting through the Miami night. The party had transformed from a glamorous charity gala into a crime scene in less than 30 minutes. "This is Agent Rodriguez, FBI Financial Crimes Division," a stern woman in a dark suit announced as she approached the stage. "We need everyone to remain calm and stay where you are." Shakira's legs seemed to give out. She sank into a chair that someone quickly brought to the stage, her perfect composure completely shattered. The woman who had commanded stages in front of hundreds of thousands of fans now looked small and defeated. "How?" she whispered, looking up at Caroline with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. "How did you know?" Caroline closed her folder and looked down at the fallen pop star. "Because unlike you, I actually read the documents before I signed them, and I have people who care more about truth than photo opportunities." Agent Rodriguez approached the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, this investigation has been ongoing for 18 months. Tonight's events have provided the final pieces of evidence we needed." The crowd of celebrities and politicians stood in stunned silence. Many were already calculating how to distance themselves from Shakira, how to explain their presence at what was now clearly a money laundering operation disguised as charity. "The Paez Descalzos Foundation," Agent Rodriguez continued, "has been used to launder approximately $200 million in cartel money over the past 5 years. Ms. Shakira Isabel Mebarak Rapol, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit money laundering, tax evasion, and providing material support to criminal organizations." As the handcuffs clicked around Shakira's wrists, she looked up at Caroline one more time. "You have no idea what you've done. The people I work with don't forgive. They don't forget." Caroline stepped closer, her voice low but firm. "Neither do the families of the people killed by the cartels you've been funding. Neither do the children who never got the schools you promised to build with their money." The cameras captured every moment as Shakira was led away. The woman who had sung about truth and justice, who had lectured world leaders about corruption, was now facing life in prison for the very crimes she had publicly condemned. But as the FBI agents escorted Shakira toward their vehicles, Caroline noticed something that made her blood run cold. The man in the expensive suit who had been trying to escape earlier was now standing at the edge of the property, talking on his phone and staring directly at her. He wasn't running anymore. He was planning. Emma appeared at Caroline's side, her face pale with concern. "We need to get you out of here. Now." "Why?" Caroline asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Because Shakira wasn't the only one involved in this operation, and the people above her in the food chain just watched you destroy their entire money laundering network on live television." As they walked quickly toward their SUV, Caroline could feel eyes watching her from the shadows. She had exposed one of the biggest celebrity money laundering operations in history, but she had also just made herself a target of some of the most dangerous people in the world. The real question was, would she make it home alive? 3 weeks later, Caroline stood behind the White House podium, facing a room full of international reporters. The Shakira scandal had exploded across every media platform on the planet. The pop star's music had been pulled from streaming services, her concerts canceled, and her business empire was crumbling as investigators uncovered more evidence of cartel connections. But the story was far from over. Ms. Levitt, a reporter from Univision, called out, "Colombian authorities have now arrested 12 other celebrities and politicians connected to the same money laundering network. Do you believe this investigation will expand further?" Caroline adjusted her silver cross necklace, a gesture that had become her signature move when delivering difficult truths. "The evidence speaks for itself. When you follow the money, you find the corruption. And we're just getting started." What the public didn't know was that Caroline had been living under federal protection since the Miami incident. The man in the expensive suit had been identified as Carlos Mendoza, a high-level cartel financial coordinator. Intelligence agencies had intercepted communications, suggesting that Caroline was now considered a priority target. "The most important thing," Caroline continued, "is that the children who were supposed to benefit from these fake charities will now receive real help. The recovered funds are being redirected to legitimate organizations that actually build schools and provide education." A reporter from CNN raised her hand. "There are rumors that you had inside information about Shakira's activities before attending the gala. Can you comment on that?" Caroline smiled slightly. I had what every journalist should have, but rarely uses anymore. Curiosity and the willingness to read public documents. Everything I revealed that night was available in government filings, financial records, in court documents. The only secret was that nobody bothered to connect the dots. What she didn't mention was the anonymous tip that had arrived at her office 2 days before the gala. A single photograph of Shakira meeting with known cartel members, along with a note that simply said, "She's not who she pretends to be." The investigation had revealed that Shakira's entire charitable empire was a facade. The schools that did exist were poorly built and understaffed. The programs that were supposed to help children were actually fronts for moving drug money. And the woman who had positioned herself as a voice for social justice had been profiting from some of the most violent criminal organizations in the world. Ms. Levitt, another reporter called out, Shakira's legal team claims you orchestrated a political hit job. How do you respond? Caroline's expression hardened. When someone steals money meant for children and uses it to fund organizations that murder innocent people, exposing that isn't politics, it's justice. The room fell silent. Even the most skeptical reporters had to admit that the evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, wire transfers, meeting photographs, and testimony from cartel members who had agreed to cooperate with authorities painted a clear picture of a sophisticated criminal operation. But the biggest revelation was still to come. There's one more thing, Caroline said, opening a new folder on the podium. The investigation has uncovered evidence that this money laundering network extends far beyond entertainment. We've identified politicians, business leaders, and even some journalists who have been receiving cartel money through similar fake charity operations. The room erupted in shouting as reporters realized that some of their own colleagues might be implicated. Caroline raised her hand for silence. The full list will be released by the Department of Justice next week. But I want to be clear about something. This isn't about politics, nationality, or celebrity status. This is about the rule of law and protecting the innocent people who suffer when corruption goes unchecked. As she left the podium, Caroline reflected on how much had changed since that night in Miami. Shakira was facing life in prison. Dozens of other celebrities and politicians were under investigation, and the cartels had lost one of their most effective money laundering operations. But most importantly, the $200 million in recovered funds was now being used to build real schools, provide real health care, and offer real opportunities to children across Latin America. The woman who had once sung "Whenever, Wherever" was now singing a different tune from her federal prison cell. And Caroline Leavitt, the youngest White House press secretary in history, had proven that sometimes the most powerful weapon against corruption isn't a gun or a bomb. Sometimes it's just the courage to read the documents out loud.